Welcome to today's show. I am your host, Eric Donnelly Small. And on today's show, there's a lot to get to. A lot happened last week I want to catch everyone up on. And a lot of this is sort of could have been a stick a pin in it segment, because I sort of want to, again, continue to reiterate what I've already been talking about, which is further proof of what Donald Trump and the conservative movement is up to and has been up to for the longest time. This is going to be a show that is going to be a little bit more about what's going on in the market and in the economy. I did my last show last time with talking a little bit about the price of eggs and how Donald Trump has failed to deliver on that promise to do something about the price of things, right? That was supposed to be the reason why he won, was because he was so much better talking to, and Republicans have a better reputation with the economy, even though there's no facts or evidence to prove that. Actually, there's evidence to the contrary. And I mean, I'm talking about for decades, evidence to the contrary. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the market, the economy. And I want to talk a little bit about where we're seeing this administration go in week 3 of the administration. Hard to believe. There's a couple of things, and I don't want to spend too much time on the racism, but I am going to spend a little bit of time. This is recording on 2/11 on Tuesday, and 10:47 p.m. As you can see, Steve Bannon has just admitted guilt to the Build a Wall case in New York. I am assuming he's doing that because he knows Donald Trump will let him go. But I just wanted to talk about DEI a little bit. The Super Bowl was just the other day, and we know that, I don't know what the hell this is, that a little bit of controversy over the Super Bowl was that they decided to remove the end racism message at the end of the Super Bowl, at the end zone. And it was, it had been there in the wake of George Floyd's killing. And the NFL, I guess, decided to be a part of the anti-DEI movement, decided to remove the end racism message at the end of the end zone. And that was a little bit of a story that I think only became more popular now that Donald Trump visited New Orleans and was at the Super Bowl. But this had been something that was talked about for some time before the Super Bowl. And I'm just looking for another story since I can't get it on The Athletic with that ad coming up. And this was from, just to prove a point, this was from February 8th. So days before the Super Bowl, they had decided to get rid of the end racism. NFL is removing the lettering from the end zone on its football field that reads end racism. The NFL started using the lettering back in 2020 in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and the nationwide protests that followed. Let's not forget that wasn't something that the NFL did out of the kindness of its heart. There was, I think, for the first time in history, every single major sports league, hockey, baseball, football, basketball, all of them shut down. And the players demanded that the NFL, that the sports leagues do something about racism and make it a priority. And in solidarity, all of the sports teams sort of stepped down for a day. And part of the concessions that I think the NFL did is the members demanded certain things. And one of the things I think that they did was put the end racism there at the end of the field there. But the end zone. But from any reading between the lines, the NFL's decision to do away with that lettering, they saw this. America's most popular sports league was downplaying its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts after Trump criticized such initiatives and his administration began targeting those programs and federal agencies. Other big, powerful companies like Target, Meta, and Amazon were more substantially rolling back their their DEI initiatives. So that is one side of the coin. But here is another, which is very interesting, and I would encourage people to sort of begin to patronize these businesses that are out there doing the right thing, because there are some companies that are pushing back against the anti-DEI efforts. And, as the Trump administration targeted its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, many prominent companies have publicly scaled back or scrapping their programs and goals for merits such as employee and leadership representation. Others have insisted they will continue to support DEI, opening themselves up to political pressure, but also financial opportunity. DEI professionals told CNBC that either strategy comes with tricky pros and cons. Brands seen as advocating for DEI could face legal challenges, but they could also benefit from the advantages of DEI and the loyalty of customers who share their values. Some companies fearful of moving too loudly in either direction may continue to support DEI internally, even as they stay silent. Several companies, such as Lowe's, Ford, had begun rolling back DEI programs. In late January, Target issued an internal memo ending several DEI-related goals. On Wednesday, Google said it would retire its aspirational hiring. But some companies have stood firm in their support of DEI since the executive order. Costco is perhaps the most prominent example. Its board of directors unanimously opposed the proposal by the National Center for Public Policy Research, a conservative think tank, for the wholesaler to publish a report on the risks of DEI policies. Investors defeated the proposal with about 98% voting against it, the company announced at its annual shareholder meeting January 23rd. Apple is similarly resisting the think tank's proposal for the tech giant to consider abolishing its diversity and inclusion initiatives. Several high-profile CEOs, including Bill Reddy of Pinterest, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, David Solomon of Goldman Sachs, have recently indicated that their businesses will stick with their current approaches on DEI. Both JP Morgan and Goldman are targets of anti-DEI proposals by the National Center for Public Policy Research. Support these businesses if you can, that are supporting attempts to continue to create a diverse workforce. It is important going forward, because we know that that is the goal of conservatism, of Republicans, and finally of Donald Trump. Speaking of Donald Trump and conservatives, we're learning a new word thanks to a lot of people, including Paul Krugman, autogolpe. And there is a pronunciation of this. Let me see if I can bring it up.
Autogolpe. Autogolpe. Autogolpe.
Autogolpe. Autogolpe. Never heard of it in my entire life, but apparently it's a Latin, or it's from Latin America phrase. And it is a self-coup. It says Latin American readers are surely familiar with the term. An autogolpe is literally a self-coup where a legitimately elected leader uses his power to seize total control, eliminating legal and constitutional restraints on his power. So that is what Paul Krugman is saying. Are Musk and Trump trying to pull off an autogolpe here? Of course they are. And they're doing so with, as far as I can tell, the full support of every Republican in the House and the Senate. So that's another thing, just to make a note. I put a video up not too long ago that asked if this was a coup, if it's too early to call it a coup, if it's too severe. Apparently, the people who know about coups don't believe so. They believe that this is a self-coup, which is, I don't know, I guess it's something that is well known and has been done before, particularly in Latin America with Latin American countries. Also, just of note, Paul Krugman again puts a link to this, and this is for those who are very interested in keeping track of what's going on with respect to what the administration is doing. There's a website called crisisnotes.com. Support this website if you can, and the creator Nathan Tankus This is a guy who apparently has sources inside the Fed who are keeping him updated and therefore keeping us updated on what Musk and Donald Trump are doing, particularly Musk with respect to the code. I just want to remind readers and viewers that what is happening is illegal. It is against the law. Courts have told Donald Trump and his merry band of 25-year-old Nazis or Nazi sympathizers that they are to stop and to continue sending payments. Donald Trump has ignored that. Everyone from his vice president, J.D. Vance, has basically called for ignoring the courts. Musk has said that the judge should be impeached. So they are totally and completely ignoring a judge's order, a court order. And one funny thing, Trey Crowder, who is the liberal redneck, sort of came out in his video and said, wait a minute, we could do that? You mean all this time Democrats could have been doing that, just ignoring court orders? And you have seen silence, or if you haven't seen silence, you've seen complicity among conservatives and among Republicans. So the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and his minions are in violation of a court order, which has told them basically to continue paying the government's bills, and they've decided not to do it. And nobody's doing anything about it. Notes on the crisis, Nathan Tankis's website has been keeping us updated on exactly what's going on. And this is his notes from February 10th. Day 11 of the Trump-Musk Treasury payments crisis of 2025, Mark Elez resignation, return, and irrelevance. And I'm just going to read a portion of this so that you can get a sense of what is going on and the seriousness of it. Now, I also want to note that I read something very quickly. I didn't go into a lot of detail, but there is reporting that the Democrats are seeking mental help during this time more than usual. I don't know if any Republicans or independents are, but this particular article was about the mental health of Democrats during this time. I think it's really, really important to guard your mental health during this time. I think that there's a lot happening. There's a lot of fear mongering, I think, done on the left. And with good reason, because I think people are very much concerned and are worried. But having unregulated fear is never a good thing, and it does not motivate you to action. What will motivate you to action, and as I talked about this before, and you can search very easily online, is to speak to, call your local representative, go out there, become a part of Indivisible is one group that was started during the first Trump administration. And there are other groups like that. I'm sure there are meetups you can find, and start talking to people, start figuring out little things that you can do, but don't give in to despair and worry, because that's not going to help you. And again, and in that vein, if your desire to not hear about what is going on for your own mental health, then by all means, switch to something that's more entertaining right now, because I wouldn't want people to sacrifice their mental health over what's happening, particularly given how much is out of your control, out of anyone's control, unless you're willing to physically go into the Treasury, which, by the way, people may remember the name Ayman Bundy and the Bundy Ranch. And very quickly, Bundy was a guy who was grazing his cattle. I can't remember where this was, but let's say it's in the Midwest somewhere, grazing his cattle on federal land, and you have to pay. It's not a huge amount, but you have to pay the federal government if your cattle is grazing on federal land. And he refused and felt like the government shouldn't be able to rule this land, and it belongs to the state, and it should, the state should send him a bill, not the federal government. So he continued grazing, and eventually feds came knocking on his door. And to make the long story short, his son and a bunch of, local interest leaders got together and formed a little militia. And the next time the feds came, they met the feds with guns, and the federal officers turned around and left. And that became a bit of a thing where they decided to hold up on federal land. Bad things happened, and eventually the son, I think father and son, went to jail. But all that to say that Republicans, conservatives, when they believe that they're in the right, they have no problems putting their bodies in front of it. and forming groups to physically prevent things from happening. Not so on the left. And, I really have been somewhat surprised, although not really, because let's not forget the activist wing of the Democratic Party is constantly under attack by the Democratic Party. We know that Cori Bush was ousted because of moderate Democrats, as well as AIPAC decided to go after her. And she was someone who put herself bodily on the steps of the Capitol with protest. That was the protest wing of the Democratic Party. The squad is constantly under attack. But the moderate Jamal Bowman is the other one. But the moderate replacements, you haven't heard a word from them. Wes Bell, have you ever heard that name before? Have you ever seen him anywhere? No, that is the person who replaced Cori Bush. But they're sitting around waiting for leadership to do something. Who knows what the hell they're doing, but they're not going to physically go to the Treasury Department and take these 25-year-olds by the scruff of the neck and throw them the hell out. And along with Elon Musk and say, come back with the feds when you got them, but you can't stay here anymore. A court order has blocked this. So when we hear about Democrats here, particularly Never Trumpers and other media people whining about why aren't the Democrats doing more? Why aren't they standing up to this? This is why. It's because the protest base of the party is ousted during the good times because they don't like their politics. They don't like what they have to say. They don't agree with them. So they try to get a moderate in there. And moderates, particularly during this time, are not what you want. So, again, this is unfortunately what's happening because nobody is out there really blocking any of this stuff. So here is what Tankus has to report about what's going on. And again, I encourage to donate to his website and to his work because he's doing great work. But he says, some readers may have been distressed to get a flurry of notes from the crisis pieces in their email and then suddenly nothing. There's nothing disastrous about it. I'm sending out this newsletter today to make sure that the people looking for some good news, at least by the standards of the day, can get some now. Our story begins right where we left off. Marco Elez, the Doge employee I relentlessly tracked through the bowels of the Bureau of Fiscal Services using my anonymous sources in my last 5 pieces, resigned within an hour after my piece. His resignation was a gigantic relief for me and allowed me to unwind an enormous amount of stress I'd built up over the past week. If you listen to my interviews in either Majority Report, Lever News, Bloomberg, Odd Lots, or KPFA last week, I think the stress I felt, the enormous burden that weighed on me is clear even when I was professional and kept to the facts as much as possible. Subsequent surreal news emerged on this subject, a point I'll return to, but I was able to keep on resting, and the news developed in such a way as to facilitate keeping away from work this weekend. I scrambled to raise the alarm about the issue at the beginning of last week and was successful at doing so while reinforcing my analysis with cutting-edge investigative reporting. The best I could do on Thursday was update people by updating afternoon of day 7 of the Trump-Musk Treasury payment crisis of 2025. At 3:53 p.m. on Thursday, February 6th, the Wall Street Journal published an article by Catherine Long entitled Doge Staffer Resigns Over Racist Posts. Obviously, this announcement was met with celebration from me and others, including statements from me about having gotten him. This caused confusion, with some on social media even crediting me with Catherine Long's investigative efforts. To be absolutely clear, I did not, nor did I ever claim to have found archived racist posts from Mark Elez. What I meant was something entirely different. So he goes on to say, the racist text aside, it is far more likely, though, can't be confirmed as a fact at this stage, that the increasing public pressure based on Wired, Talking Points memo, and my reporting, as well as likely increased private pressure from former government officials and financial and corporate figures, converge with the reporter getting in touch and creating a convenient cover story for Elez's resignation. It's not hard to imagine that the op-ed out today by Robert Rubin, Lawrence Summers, Timothy Geithner, Jacob Lew, and Janet Yellen reflects more varied, heterogeneous efforts last week to intervene in Treasury Secretary Bessent's reckless support of Doge despoiling of the Treasury payments system. In any case, the timing is just too perfect for it to be coincidental. I will admit my immediate reaction today was skeptical towards the timing of Catherine Long's inquiry about racist tweets. However, it appears her inquiries were simply fortuitous timing for the Trump administration. Then, of course, things got strange. Elon Musk posted on Saturday about whether Elez should be brought back. A couple hours later, Vance quote tweeted saying, bring him back. Then Musk then quoted tweets Vance and said he'll be brought back. To err is human, to forgive divine. The confirmation, however, came when Trump was asked about press conference. He said, well, I don't know about this particular thing, but if Vice President said that, did he say that? Vance confirms, I'm with the Vice President. This is a very interesting thing about Donald Trump on this one. He is smart enough to know that this guy is toxic, and he is not willing to say himself that he knows anything about what this guy said, right? But he's saying if the Vice President says, I'm with the Vice President. So he is, Donald Trump is not a dumb man. He's not a smart man. He's not a moral man. He's not an ethical man, but he's not a dumb man. And he knows enough to know that even as powerful as he is, racism is toxic, to embrace it. He's willing to play footsie with it. He's willing to show a little leg. He's willing to, at events that are supporting of it, he's willing to endorse it. He's willing to give racists what they want and what they need for exchange for their loyalty and votes. And he will, by the way, demand that loyalty to commit crimes and to put themselves in harm's way for him. So he's willing to do that, but he's not willing to embrace the racism, outward racism like Vance is, because he knows Vance is an idiot. And the rest of these guys don't know what they're doing. He has enough of a, not criminal mastermind, but he has enough of, not even common sense, but just enough of a sense of self-preservation to know I don't want to be associated with this guy because he's no damn good. I'm willing to be associated with Vance because I'll throw Vance to the wolves at any point in time. But he says, I don't know anything about this Elez kid in the racist tweets. All I know is that J.D. Vance said it, and I'm with the Vice President. Very interesting, I find. And J.D. Vance and the rest of these guys are too stupid to realize what Donald Trump has just done in this. Continue on. There's part of the Trump administration that makes decisions seemingly led by the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, and there's the part of the Trump administration that makes posts and turns those into decisions. The first part is likely who pushed Marco Elez to resign. The second part is what brought him back. It was, however, unclear whether being rehired meant back at the United States Treasury. This was crucial because Thursday's injunction only allowed him and Thomas Kraus read-only access, barring any other special government employees or outside actors from access to these systems. Further, according to my sources, Kraus was not involved in the direct assessment of these systems. So with Marco out, it seems that Doge would be locked out under, of course, the crucial assumption that they respect the court injunction. The Treasury dodged questions about whether Elez would be rejoining them. These questions became moot early Saturday morning, but we'll return to that in a moment. The crucial question is this: when Elez left, how was his activities in the Bureau of Fiscal Services being treated? I can't speak to the state of play as of today. However, I can confirm Wired's Friday afternoon article entitled U.S. Treasury Threat Intelligence Analyst Designates Doge Saft an Insider Threat. In fact, I posted on Blue Sky, since I want to keep on resting, the confirmation from one of my sources. BFS is treating Marco's resignation as a cybersecurity breach. The cyber teams are working overtime to analyze the forensic artifacts Marco left behind and determine what he saw and did. It is absolutely extraordinary that any employee given top-level access as ordered by the White House was being treated this way. As of this writing, it's unclear how this lasted or whether treating this as a cybersecurity breach was continued informally even as the White House and Treasury Secretary Bessent's pressure intensified. I would like to put off writing about this more until tomorrow for a number of reasons, not least of which we may gain more clarity by the time I sit down and write about this then. So I'll put a link in my Mastodon to the full article so that you can see what Tankus is talking about here and get more details. He's gonna update this. This was on the 10th. That means he should be updating it today about what he's thinking about and talking about. But it is an interesting thing to look at how much this whole thing is beginning to unravel and beginning to become big problems. How this connects into everything else is interesting. Paul Krugman has been talking about the danger of this. And it's not just that Social Security will not go out, Social Security checks will not go out, but if they mess around with the payment systems, we may not be able to pay our debts, which would be a default breach. It would be like going over the debt ceiling. And I just want to highlight how important it is when we talk about what's happening so far. As I indicated, the markets, which is something that I really wanted to focus on today, is really rattled. And one of the things that Krugman says that's very interesting is that he expects the agencies to begin to not report accurate numbers. All of the agencies under the White House, under the executive branch. And that includes the Fed, about unemployment, about all those numbers. We know that because that's what they do, right? How do we know that he's going to do that? That's what they do. That is what DeSantis did in Florida during COVID numbers. That's what Donald Trump was talking about doing. Stop reporting the numbers. Stop reporting. That's what authoritarians do. That's what they do in China. That's what they do in Russia. Is when the numbers start looking bad, stop reporting on it. And for Donald Trump, that's a no-brainer. But Paul Krugman says, which is fascinating, and one thing to look out for, this is a thing to stick a pin in, is that although he may be able to fake numbers given by the BLS, given by the Treasury, and etc., he's not going to be able to fool the markets. And the markets, Wall Street, is going to become the true arbiter of what's really going on. So he may show that the inflation is down to 2%, 1.9% or something like that. But the markets are going to continue sinking because inflation, they know inflation has gone to 5%, 6%, whatever. So that's one thing I just want to keep an eye on and just note that expect the numbers coming out of the government to be cooked. They're going to start cooking the books because that's what a criminal would do. Fed Chair Powell, this is S&P a little change as Powell comments on trade tension and weighs in on market. Donald Trump has issued a bunch of new tariffs that had the market down. The auto industry is hurting. Ford has said that the auto industry is in chaos because metal, aluminum, beer cans, by the way, if you drink beer, if you drink soda, they come in cans. They're made of aluminum. That's going to now go up. The price of that's going to go up. So you're going to see increases going up. Donald Trump's numbers right now, his approval numbers are going up and up and up. As I've said in previous videos, it's going to take time for people to begin to feel this, but it's happening. Fed Chair Powell says the central bank doesn't need to be in a hurry to lower interest rates any further. Now, what does that mean? If you're looking for that low mortgage, the mortgage rates to go down from 7, 8, 9% to, 6, 5, 4%, like Donald Trump said he would do. He was talking about stuff like this, speaking to the Fed chair about lowering interest rates so that you can buy a home. That's not happening anytime soon. And apparently Donald Trump doesn't look to be firing Fed Chair Powell anytime soon. So again, it's taking time, but people will eventually get it. People will begin to understand what's really going on here. It's just going to take time. This again, CNBC as of today. This is at 11 o'clock on Tuesday. Keep your hands off of our Social Security, lawmakers warn amid Doge budget crisis. Coca-Cola says it will sell more soda in plastic bottles if aluminum tariffs take effect. Of course, that's going to be bad for the environment. And this guy here, CFPB head, Russell Vought. I want to talk a little bit about him because Krugman decides to go into his dedicate his whole article to it today. And Springtime for Scammers, it's called. Russell Vought, he was the head of OMB. Now he's the head of the CFPB. He is one of the architects of Project 2025 that you may have heard a lot about over time. And I just want to look up Russell Vought and give you a little idea because I had no idea who he was, and I don't think anyone else did. And he is probably I almost thought that he was what's her name, the actress's father, who's a big time right wing, Angelina Jolie's father, but no, he is a Christian nationalist. Surprise, surprise. He is against critical race theory. Surprise, surprise. This is from Wikipedia. He is a self-described Christian nationalist. In 2021, he founded the Center for Renewing America, an organization that opposes critical race theory and advocates for the idea of America as a nation under God. He also played a significant role in Project 2025, an initiative led by Heritage Foundation that aims to advance conservative right-wing policies and reshape the federal government. He was appointed policy director of the Republican National Committee's platform. In 2024, President-elect Donald Trump announced that he would renominate him as OMB director and was confirmed 53-47, every single Republican supporting, every single Democrat opposed. Now, what do we know about Christian nationalism? What do we know about critical race theory? And what do we know about conservatism and in this time? One of the things that we do know, as I've been saying for a long time, this is a problem that is not Donald Trump. It is conservatism. This is right-wing conservatism on the march, the enduring backlash, as I call it. This is a backlash against the rights package of the 1960s, 50s, 60s, into the 70s, as well as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the Affordable Care Act. This is an attack on what we would call liberal progress and progressive agenda that has happened and has made this country freer and more liberal for the last 50, 60 years. So this didn't just begin with Trump. Trump is only enacting what they have been after for the longest time. So this is our adversary here is right-wing conservatism. It is then the 53 Republicans to 47, 53%. That includes Collins and Murkowski, who many people have seen as sort of, the heroes on the right or whatnot. This is the part of the Republican Party that is in collusion with this, right? They are making this happen. So anyone who goes out should be saying this. This is not Donald Trump. They should be putting this right on the Republican Party and on conservatives. Donald Trump comes last in this. Donald Trump didn't even know who this guy was. He doesn't even know what critical race theory or Christian nationalism is practically. Donald Trump, I mean, come on, give me a break. This man couldn't care less about this. He's looking for a payday. He's looking for somebody to be loyal, and he will reward loyalty by putting them in positions of power. But make no mistake, this is a conservative movement that has been trying to re-engineer the country going back for decades, and they're after a pro-racism, they're after an anti civil rights agenda movement. They're after there are a anti-civil rights movement party and program. And Christian nationalism, of course, is the idea that this country should be a Christian nation. So they're not about, by the way, freedom of religion. They're about America's a Christian religion, take it or leave it. So if you're a Muslim, if you're a Jew or someone like that, Christian nationalism is a form of religious nationalism that focuses on promoting the Christian views of its followers in order to achieve prominence and dominance in political social life. I think this is a little bit of a muted definition. Christian nationalism is about the America bending to the will of Christians and of their interpretation of the law, and that the law should bend to their interpretation of Christianity. No different than what in the Middle East, Islam is their nationality, their national religion. The laws of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, they're all based on the Quran. And all of the laws and all of the belief of the country, that all of their laws should be based on Quran and their interpretation of what the Quran says. That's why women are dressed in hijabs and completely covered up, because the Quran says it, right? That's why all of the conservative beliefs of the country, women shouldn't drive, women should stay in the home, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, moving on. This is from Krugman's post that I think it went up today or last night. And he talks about, and I just want to go over it briefly, I'll put this link in my Mastodon, that this guy, Russell Vought, has immediately gone out, now that he's been sworn in, 53 all Republicans against all Democrats. The American people, by the way, have voted for this. He has been sworn in, and he has immediately shut down the CFPB. And what does the CFPB do? According to the New York Times, they went after Wells Fargo, who agreed to pay $3.7 billion. And the government discovered that it Wells Fargo engaged in an array of banking violations over the last decade that harmed millions of customers. The Consumer Protection Bureau said that Wells Fargo did not report customer payments on home and auto loans properly, wrongfully repossessed some borrowers' cars and homes, and charged overdraft fees even when customers had enough money to cover purchases they made with their bank cards. The settlement followed earlier scandals at Wells Fargo, notably the cross-selling scandal, in which, among other things, bank employees opened as many as 2 million accounts in customer names without their authorization. Altogether, the bank has paid $6.2 billion in penalties since 2016. Overall, according to Senator Elizabeth Warren, who conceived the CFPB, the Bureau has returned over $21 billion to families cheated by Wall Street. So, again, this is the conservative movement. They hate that there is somebody, a cop on the beat, that is there to prevent people from being cheated by companies. They hate the fact that there is somebody looking out for the average American. This is why they had to get rid of Lena Khan. This is why, by the way, Wall Street, there was a bump up. This is why Donald Trump was there to ring in the bell. This is why they had, Make America Great Again hats and T-shirts. This is why they believe that Donald Trump will unleash capitalism, will unleash the markets. This is why Republicans in the business sector loves them so much, because they want to subsidize the losses and reap all the gains. They want to see tax cuts, and they want to see regulations dismantled, and they want to undo the CFPB. They can't do it legally. They tried it last time. The Supreme Court upheld the CFPB. They could pass a law to get rid of it. That will be very interesting to see how long that takes, and how many Republicans will stomach that. But the bottom line is that they want to make scamming and corruption great again. Donald Trump it's almost amusing how corrupt he is. But he recently, according to CNBC, recently overturned a ruling against bribing officials. I just want to bring that really quickly. It's not here. But yeah, he overturned a law that it makes it illegal to bribe federal officials or to bribe officials overseas to get what he wants. So it's total corruption. It's corruption. It's collusion amongst the Republican Party in the House and the Senate. And it is also the conservative movement, conservative Christian nationalism on the march, getting what they want out of Donald Trump. And the American people will suffer. Not yet. It's going to take time. We're only 3 weeks in, and his approval numbers are high. But already the markets are shook. And there was an article I was going to read here. Let me see if I can do that very briefly, see if I can bring that up. There's an article that already, and this is one of the things that Krugman points out kind of amusingly, that already markets are not quite sure about Trump. Trump 2.0 isn't quite what Wall Street expected. This is from Yahoo Finance. And it says the start of Trump 2.0 is not quite what Wall Street expected. Deal making had its slowest month in January in more than a decade. A prize tax break for hedge funds and private equity firms came under threat, and big banks got grilled over whether they debanked certain customers. These complications were not part of the plan when Donald Trump was elected in November, an event that set off a round of optimistic predictions about M&A boom, looser rules, and more favorable approach to big Wall Street firms in Washington, D.C. Instead, bankers ended January with the lowest number of announced M&A deals within the United States since the same time this month in 2014. Trump's new antitrust cops also signaled in the administration's second week that they weren't going to give a free pass to big mergers by blocking potential union between Hewlett-Packard and Juniper Networks. And new uncertainties surrounding the president's tariff plans are leaving many businesses unsure about whether to make big moves and what direction borrowing costs might take in the weeks and the months ahead. So, of course, it's not, any of the stories about how Donald Trump is undoing the code within the Treasury Department. No, this is about M&A, mergers and acquisitions, etc. So they're looking for the almighty dollar when the Treasury is unable to pay its bills because the system that these 25-year-olds built crashes under the weight. Then maybe Wall Street will wake up. But until then, things are dire indeed. But again, self-care. Look out for yourself if you want to become active, get into groups, get into online chats, etc. And you can find out more information about how you can be active, but take a break. Don't drive yourself crazy over this stuff. Things that you can't control. Thank you for joining me on today's video. You will see me on the next one. Take care, everyone. Hey there, fantastic viewers. Eric Darnley Small here, and I hope you're loving today's episode of What You Missed. You've reached the end of today's show, but don't worry, there's more show coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click the bell so that you'll be notified when more content is available. You can also help the channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm find new viewers so that I can keep bringing you all this incredible content you enjoy. But wait, there are more ways to support the show. You can make a contribution through the show's PayPal, which goes a long way in helping produce even better content for you. And consider becoming a part of our growing community by joining our Mastodon site at mastodon.vtip.me/@whatyoumissed for more engaging discussions and exclusive updates. And here's something you won't want to miss. Mark your calendars for our live show streaming on YouTube and stream.vtip.me Monday mornings, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your support means the world to me, and together we're making What You Missed the best it can be. Thanks for being a part of my journey.